Happening right now, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley holding a town hall in his home state of Iowa. It comes as voters nationwide have been venting about President Trump's handling of the economy, including his trade wars. Iowa, being a rural state that relies on farming, one of the states most at risk from China's retaliatory tariffs on agriculture. And voters there are hoping to get that message through.
On a local concern, I know we just shut off a lot of soybean trade with China with a 125% tariff. So that's going to affect us, obviously.
I'm hoping just like he made the tariff bill where they have to wait for congressional oversight. I'm hoping he takes a lot more actions like that where Congress reasserts their position in the checks and balances.
A new CBS News poll showing 49% of Americans feel Trump's policies are making them worse off. That number up from 42% just last month. For more on all of this, pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz joins us now. Frank, always good to see you. Listen, the president was elected in large part based on what we heard from voters, what you, I think, heard in your focus groups as well, to bring down the cost of living in this country. They thought just getting through a day was too expensive. What are you hearing from voters as this tariff war plays out and we learn more about the real world impacts?
Let me compliment you on having a good memory. That's exactly why he won. He was more likely to lower prices than his opponent. And now the public is looking and wondering. But the key spread here is not economic, it's not geographic, it's political. If you're a Democrat, you believe that everything he's done up to this point is wrong, and you're afraid of what he's going to do next. If you're a Trump supporter, you believe everything he has done has been perfect, and things are developing exactly what they expected. The reason why the numbers have deteriorated is among independents, those who don't like Republicans or Democrats. And they are becoming increasingly hostile to this administration because they think that he's too focused, that President Trump is too focused on political matters and not focused on day-to-day concerns. Now, that represents about 20% of the population, but that's exactly why his numbers have fallen in the last 4 weeks.
And where was he with independents? Like, help give us a little context around where he was with independents, maybe when his term started just a few months ago versus where they are today.
Well, he was at his all-time high in popularity, and they liked exactly what they were hearing from him in terms of immigration and the economy, the number one and number two issues between the moment of his election and the inauguration. Now, things have fallen because the reality has been a little bit different than what was presented. I do want to emphasize that the agenda that the president speaks of still has majority support among those independents, but the execution and, more importantly, the communication of that agenda is slipping and continues to slide. If he wants to bring his numbers back up to that critical 50% mark, he's going to have to communicate a lot better than he's done up to this point, because if they agree with you, but they don't like what you're doing, that's a communication failure that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's so interesting because again and again when we talk to people, they will say, like, I support what he's doing. It's the how he's doing it. That we hear the how he's doing it over and over again. I do want to ask you about the Democrats in all of this. This is what we heard from voters at Democratic town halls last night. I'll just let people listen to this.
The Democrats have had a messaging problem, not just for a couple years, but for a couple decades now. We're in trouble. And it's only going to get worse. If we are continually behind the eight ball, it's only going to get worse. And it's pretty damn bad right now.
When is the Democratic Party going to gather together in a unified message with a unified goal and be transparent and come out on the radio, on the television, in the newspaper, and give these people some leadership?
So, Frank, this is focusing just on the Democratic Party and people who identify as Democrats. Clearly, a lot of these people are quite frustrated. They've been quite frustrated. Where are you finding them today as opposed to even a couple of months ago when we saw these all-time lows of how people viewed the party? But is it getting worse for Democrats? Have they found any messaging, any way out of this to convince their supporters that they are figuring this out?
Yes, they have. And the person is Senator Cory Booker. And he spoke for 25 straight hours. What was amazing is the person who's doing the damage for the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, is the one who interrupted Senator Booker to say, sir, you just set the record. Schumer did that because he wanted to make sure he was part of that historic moment. So every time they play that moment, Schumer's voice will be heard. That's the problem. The party is still focused on the past rather than on the future. There is an opening for Democrats in endorsing things like ending wasteful Washington spending, but doing it in a more compassionate and more controlled way. Holding foreign aid accountable. This is one of the best examples I know of politics taking over policy. The public does want to help AIDS, the fighting of AIDS in Africa. The public does want foreign aid that helps feed people, that helps end starvation, that adds to a level of healthcare and security, but not when those programs waste money, hardworking taxpayers' money. And the Democrats end up being extreme in their communication, and they're missing such a great opportunity to challenge and to say, we agree with these priorities, we simply have a different approach. And Booker did that, and he did it successfully.
And you saw like real reaction to that. He was able to get some traction then, based on what you saw.
He's able to get traction because he's speaking about day-to-day concerns. What happens to the average individual when they wake up in the morning, all the way up to when they go to sleep at night? How do you affect them? And this is where Donald Trump was particularly good in the last few weeks of the election, avoiding the nonsense, all the ideological yelling and screaming, and focusing on day-to-day concerns. But we haven't heard that in the last few weeks from him. And so Americans are turning angry and ugly, and you're going to see some really loud, abusive town halls in the weeks to follow, because everyone is mad again, everyone is divided again, and it is toxic and polarizing. And I'm waiting for a Booker on the Republican side to say, look, we can get this done. We can keep our promises, but in a way that doesn't create this bitterness and this resentment towards America at a time when we really need to be finding ways to work together.
It will be interesting to see. Just quickly before I let you go, on immigration, obviously a lot of that in the news. We had the president of El Salvador in the Oval Office yesterday. The man who is currently being held, that Maryland man who was wrongly deported and is still being held with no indication from the White House that they're going to bring him back. How do Americans feel about that?
I can't address that specific case because I haven't asked that question. But I do know that the public overwhelmingly supports a tough approach, overwhelmingly supports action over inaction. And this is one area where the president has done well in communicating that we're simply not doing it the way it's been done before. And we're going to be really tough. Now, obviously, we're a compassionate people, and we don't want people deported who shouldn't be. But the Democrats will make a mistake if they go at Trump in this area, because the public wants the border sealed. They want the right people coming across it. They want tall gates to invite immigration to continue to happen, but they don't want illegal immigration, and they want it stopped.
All right, Frank Luntz, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.